Greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining us here. This is Erica Griffin, coming to you from the wonderful CAN TV studios, here representing the Dusable Museum of African American History. So again, welcome to Mondays at the Do. We have had so many amazing programs, so many amazing events this year, this summer in particular, at the museum, and we're going to get into those. But as always, before we get into our meat and potatoes of our experience today, we want to make mention that if you'd like to learn more about us at the Dusable Museum, please visit our website at www.dusablemuseum.org. You can also give us a call at 773-947-0600 or stop by for a visit. We are located at 740 East 56th Place in Chicago, Illinois, 60637. Also, if you have a social media account, please use the hashtag DuCanTV. That is DuCanTV. So there are lots of different ways to reach out to us. The museum is open Tuesday through Sunday. Tuesdays through Fridays, we are open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Sundays, 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. So lots of different ways to reach out. We all want to make sure that you are engaged with us at the museum and that we are offering you the most amazing experience that we can at the museum. Now, as I mentioned, we've had so many amazing programs this summer, and we're at the tail end, but we're just chugging right along, bringing you these amazing experiences. And again, we hope that you join us. First, this week, on August the 10th, we have a film screening. We are showing the amazing documentary entitled I Am Not Your Negro. And this film chronicles the amazing story of the turbulent 60s of the United States, follows different careers of people that had an influence during that time period. So we want you all to come out, join us. This is in conjunction with the cultural service at the Consulate General of France. So we'll have the film screening. We'll also have live music performance before the film screening at 7 p.m. This will take place outside, just like our Movies in the Park experience, so be sure to join us for that. This event is free and open to the public. Up next on August the 16th, which is the third Wednesday in August, we have our Sounds of History Jazz series. And just like our other events, it's going to be a jazzy good time. Make sure you bring out your lawn chairs. Make sure you bring out your food, your family, and your friends and join us there on our Sunken Garden patio. The theme for the jazz experience this particular installment is a jazzy jam at the Do. Here's to you, Dr. Margaret Burroughs. Now, for those of you who are not aware, this year marks the centennial of Dr. Margaret Burroughs, the founder of the Dusable Museum of African American History. So throughout the entire year, we will have programs, events, musical concerts, films that are all dedicated or inspired by her and her amazing legacy on the city of Chicago and the nation. So definitely join us for that, the jazz experience at the Do. That Saturday, August the 19th, we will be showing South Side with You, and this will be our final Movies in the Park installment for the year. So again, this is another free event. Bring your family and friends, bring your food, and join us on the Sunken Garden. Hope to see you all there. I know I will be there. We also have upcoming on August 26th, a special family event called Kids Count. It's all about getting our youth to understand the importance of saving, the importance of having a relationship with a bank, understanding the relationship that we as African Americans have had with the financial industry. So there will be programming, there will be food, there will be fun, a great event, and again, another free event brought to you by the Dusable Museum of African American History. Now, we are joined this week by two very, very important individuals at the museum. Our current COO, Mr. Troy Ratliff, and also Mr. Lee Bey are here, both joining us, and they will be talking with you about our new VP of Planning, Education, and Museum Experience, Mr. Lee Bey. Will be talking about his background and what has brought him here to the Dusable Museum. So without further ado, here's Troy and Mr. Lee Bey.
Why is it Troy and Mr. Lee Bey? That's the first question I would ask.
That's the only way I'd have it.
Okay. Well, Lee, we are very glad to have you as a vice president here at the Dusable Museum. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got here? I know your history, but perhaps some people out there don't.
Well, I've had a strange career history. I started out as a journalist, writing about architecture for the Chicago Sun-Times. That led to a job in the mayor's office under Richard M. Daley, working for Mayor Daley, advising him on architecture and urban design. Did 3 years at Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, the architecture firm, headed a nonprofit. But I've always had this sense that I want to come back home to the South Side, where I'm from and where I live, and bring whatever talents I have to bear here. And fortunately, Perry Irmer, the CEO, gave me a chance to do that.
Well, we're very, very glad to have you. Talk a little bit about your experiences as a photographer. I'm an amateur photographer myself, and I've always been interested in your work.
You know, I'm a late bloomer in this. I didn't get a camera until I was 35 years old. So that's like 15, 16, 17 years ago, thereabout. But I like photographing architecture. Started off photographing kids. Kids got tired of me chasing them with the camera. So that led to me photographing the things that don't move, which are buildings. And I got good at it. So that led to kind of a side hustle, if you will, photographing buildings for architecture firms and other clients.
Then tell us about your photography that's coming to the Dusable Museum as part of an exhibit.
Leads to a great thing. The Chicago Architecture Biennial, which obviously happens every 2 years, is having a show at the Dusable. It'll be my photography of South Side architecture, which is largely overlooked, not by the people who live there, obviously, but by the city at large, and I think architecture fans at large. We think of Chicago architecture, we tend to think of South Side, downtown buildings and North Side buildings, but we don't think of the ones on the South Side, and there is a wealth there, and we're going to take a look at them and have programming and discussions around that.
Some other events coming that you're going to be part of, the Palais de Tokyo event that's coming. Can you talk a little bit about that?
You know, I'm excited about that. I mean, this is, the Palais de Tokyo is a museum, obviously, in France. This is a satellite exhibition that's being put on in our roundhouse, which is obviously an interesting piece of architecture in its own right. Many of you know the main building, but there's a building right to the south of us, across 57th Street. Hasn't been used, but it's been restored. The exterior plans to do more work. But this will be a chance for the public to get a chance to experience this space, the interior, the rotunda of this space, probably one of the finest urban spaces in the city, will be filled with art and other things. And it's a chance to showcase that art, showcase that connection, but also a chance to show what this building can do and will do in the future.
When you came to us, you had a concept of the museum and what it meant to the South Side and to the city of Chicago, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
It was still very much. I mean, when you think about how radical it was, that 1970, well, actually before 1971, we got the building in 71, that Dr. Burroughs creates a museum of African American history at a time when these histories and this art was largely being ignored by the mainstream, by the general public. Now we find ourselves in a position where everyone wants a piece of Black history and to exhibit it, but we can do it best. So it's the idea of us coming back. The idea of the museum is as radical and as relevant now as it was 50 years ago. Now we get a chance to come back and say, yeah, but this is what these objects really mean, and this is the context for these objects and for this discussion, and it really center this discussion in the correct way. Absent that, it becomes an exhibition of pretty things that Black people have done, but that struggle and that history and that story that has to be part and parcel to this. That's what we do best.
We are now dealing with the fact that we have a major museum in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
I have not visited yet. Have you been there?
I have not.
We're the only two people left who haven't
That's
been
right,
there.
that's right, that's
And perhaps we'll go together one day.
Yeah.
But I'm always interested in the fact that we are now associated with the Smithsonian, which was a major achievement for us. Do you have any ideas as to how that's going to be beneficial to the museum?
Oh, this is really exciting because what it does is it creates an opportunity to swap exhibits, ideas, and things back and forth, to create collaborations that wouldn't have existed previously, and really to make their experience richer and our experience richer. I mean, you know, Chicago, the beauty of Chicago is that, you know, it's not only is it central in the United States physically, it's central to the American story, and it's central to the African American story. And we're here, so rather than it being Big Brother and Little Brother, I see over time that these are really two museums that are really siblings who are compatible, twins, if you will, and information and exhibits and good things can pass back and forth between the two that enrich both experiences.
We talk an awful lot about the Obama Center, at the Obama Museum, the Obama Center.
That's right.
Coming to our area, coming to the South Side. Has drawn an awful lot of attention to our area. My concern has always been that people see the Dusable Museum as a South Side institution. In your opinion, is it a Chicago institution?
It is. It's a Chicago institution. It's a national institution. It is like a movie museum would be in Hollywood. You couldn't imagine any other place. So if you're going to tell the story of America through the lens of black people, then Chicago is a place that ought to be. Happens to be located on the South Side, my home turf, which is great. Makes my commute easier. But it's really a Chicago museum telling a Chicago and national story.
Look forward to seeing a lot of Chicago artists displayed at the museum. Is that about to happen?
You know, it is. I mean, a few things I think patrons are going to see over the next few years. One is more of a focus on Chicago artists telling that Chicago story that also pivots nationally. I want to see more women artists and more women things in the museum. Exhibits about women, not necessarily shunt it to the side and say, here's the woman's story of this larger thing, but to say that is the story. And so there'll be that. Also, we have this fantastic collection I'm still learning more about. To be able to unlock what's there and show that is also part of that's in the mix, also in the mix as well.
One of the departments that you administer is education.
Mm-hmm.
Education as a concept is moving more to the forefront at Dusable Museum under the direction of Perry Irmer, our president. Do you have any concept of how that education programming is going to play out?
You know, this is really going to be the first. These are going to be the first changes I think people are going to see or have seen and will continue to see to create more robust discussions around the exhibits that we do have and to bring in the best thinkers around the city and around the country as they pass through town. They should be able to come to the Dusable and kind of have at it. To be able to tie with our exhibits a more vigorous discussion and programming around that, education piece around that, but also to bring into our home, if you will, people who are talking about the things and topics of the day. To be able to take that history and relate it to modern day, but also be able to take what's happening in modern day and relate it to our history. We feel alone in these kind of times in many respects until you realize that your grandfather went through the same thing that you went through. And your son will go through the same thing that you've gone through, and putting that in some kind of historical context makes the burden a little lighter in some respects.
Do you anticipate that we'll be doing more kid-friendly programming?
I do. I've got a great staff with Clenny Hedsmith and Chelsea Ridley and others who really want to. I mean, and because kids are the next generation, but you know, in many of the neighborhoods that we draw from, kids are the majority. So to be able to, in those neighborhoods, so to be able to have programming there that's them, you know, I got introduced, I'm old, right? So I was 6 when the Dusable Museum moved to a spot, 6 or 7, came into it as a 4th and 5th grader, and got, you know, and became enraptured. And to be able to complete that circle and have other kids come and see and experience the place so that they come back and be part of what we do is exciting. So there'll be a lot of that. There'll be a lot of that.
I'm always happy to tell people that this Dusable Museum is not their grandfather's Dusable Museum.
That's right.
There have been major changes at the museum, both in terms of exhibits and in terms of programs that we're doing there. And so we're always inviting people to come take a look. You may have been there before. You may have seen it 5, 6 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago. It is a different museum. Come on out and see what we're doing there now. And a lot of what we're going to be doing is going to be under the direction of Lee May, our vice president. We were extremely fortunate to be able to convince him to join us and be part of the Dusable staff there. We have new education programs. We have new exhibits coming. And I'm especially happy to talk about the fact that we're going to be featuring Chicago artists.
Exactly.
Talk a little bit about that, please, Lee.
You know, that's really the key, right? Is because, you know, a museum can be anywhere, right? So we can tell a national story, but it has to be also a Chicago story as well. Luckily, Chicago is very rich in terms of
There's a caller.
There's a caller. Well, look at that. Well, what do you know?
Wants to talk to us. Mm-hmm. Hello, caller. How are you?
Hello, this is Mary Ann, and I'm enjoying the show, and everything that you're saying makes a wonderful sense and making me excited. But I'm interested in when you said that you're doing education programming for young people. What I want to know is, will you be having exhibitions that will be more youth friendly to go along with these educational programming?
Marianne, thank you for calling in. Lee, you want to take that?
Indeed. I mean, the idea now, and again, I've only been there all of 2 or 3 weeks, but the idea is to create exhibits that are more, that are indeed kid-friendly, programming around it, discussions around it that are kid-friendly. Not necessarily, a kid's take on a larger issue, but things that are really dedicated to them. So, yes.
Marianne, when was the last time you were in the museum? I'm sorry, we lost Marianne? Thank you for calling, Marianne. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit more about children and the museum and what we're going to be doing there. We talked about a children's reading room at the museum. Is it possible we're going to see that within the next year or so?
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, that's the idea. And, it really is a great space. I mean, here's a museum in a wonderful park. Kids play in it, around it. To be able to have a space that's also in there for them to do their thing and to learn is important. And indeed, yes.
It's also a museum that really has content that moves seniors, like
indeed.
me. I think it's important that that seniors know that they will come there and they will see parts of our history that will bring back memories of times in Chicago that may be 40 or 50 years old. But it is a very moving experience to walk through the museum and see some of the exhibits that we have.
It really is, and that history is interesting. That that sort of recent past, the history of the 70s and 60s and 70s, which wasn't that long ago, but in some respects it was. It has an interesting thing that it does is that the people who were there remember it and respond. But also, I'm finding that the people who are my kids' age, in their 20s, are fascinated by the history that's there. So at that rate, you kind of get 2 bites of the apple. You have a history that's so compelling that it brings up the people who were there and who remember it, and then the people who also are younger who cherish it and look to it for inspiration. All of that is there and will be there at the Dusable.
And one of the things you'll notice when you come to the museum is that the exhibits are different than those you remember. We are now going forward for a program that changes exhibits fairly frequently. We have an exhibit there now called En Masse. Can you talk about En Masse and what it means?
Beautiful look at the diaspora in many ways and what happens in the in Carnival and other things. But these are the kind of things that we're looking to have there. And it takes up a lot of space, so it's an immersive exhibit in that when you walk through it, you feel like you've gone and there's video and there's other things and you feel like you've really gone through this space. I mean, these are the kind of things that we can take advantage of the space inside the museum to really do. There's another one coming up by Fabiola Jean-Louis, an artist from Haiti who lives in the East. It's kind of these riff on dresses that she does.
I've seen that, yes.
Which is really beautiful. And so these are the kind of things can't see them any other place, but you can see them here, and you can see them in the context of other exhibits that talk about our history.
I have been visiting other museums in the city, looking at how they are dealing with content, and I've been very, very impressed by what we're doing at Dusable in terms of our content. It's a very specific content for a very specific ethnicity. The story of how we have survived here in this country is extremely interesting to me.
Yes.
Will it be interesting to those who are not African American?
It certainly is. I mean, the black story, any piece of it that you take, is the story in America right now, along with the immigrant story. Whether it's hip hop, it's how we dress, how women wear their hair, how the kind of swagger, all that kind of stuff. Both the good and the bad. All of this interests the world these days. And to be able to have a place where you can go and learn exactly what it is, where it comes from, but also the story behind it. I mean, it's easy to do a couple of things with Black history. Either you take the shine, right, and say, "Oh, look at that, that's pretty. I want more of that," or you take the misery and you keep, it's like it's all about pain. But there's the full context to the story that you can tell that begins to talk about all the things you talked about. I mean, all the good things that we do, as well as the historic context that we find it in.
In that context, if you come to the museum, on our lower level, you'll see an exhibit called Freedom and Resistance, which takes us through a great part of the history of African Americans in this country. It is an exhibit that was up before you got there, but I'm sure that you appreciate what it shows now.
I certainly do. And, the resistance part is a part that intrigues me as much as anything else, because oftentimes, too often, the story is told, be it in movies or others, that we're always running from something, or we're scared of something, or all those kind of things, but we resist it. I mean, we, as a people, challenge this country to be better at all levels, and that's and as a result, we change this democracy for the better. We're still dealing with it. But that's the story that gets told in that exhibit, that comes through the pores of that exhibit, and that also will come through the pores of what happens in the museum next, that we resisted, we fought. These are things that tend to be undersold and under-talked about, but it's true, and it's part of our history, and it's going to be lifted up under this leadership.
I think that as we get ready to recognize Margaret Burroughs Centennial, we're looking at special programming along those lines. So is there anything special that you're going to talk about?
You know, we're still figuring that out. I mean, I think that one thing we want to know is that we have the repository, a repository of what Margaret Burroughs wrote, said, thought, collected, felt, and the idea is to get that into, let people see that. And so I can see exhibits around that. I tend to like video and that kind of thing, so I'm looking at my own sources to get early video for talking about this museum or talking about art or whatever she wants, so people can see what she was like in this critical part of our junction. But again, we can't forget how radical this museum was for the time, and that the life of that museum is maintaining that radical nature, that cutting edge nature into the next decade, into the decades to come.
In addition to Margaret's collection, we have a wonderful collection at the Dusable Museum, fantastic collection of artifacts and papers that we're going to be displaying on a more regular basis now. One of the things that I'm very interested in, and I know that you will be very interested in, is that fact that we have John Tweedles' work.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just one of the many things that we have to unearth and to show that we haven't been able to do in the past, but that we can do now.
And I see it said we have a caller. Did she go away?
No, hello, my name's Jackie. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Jackie?
I'm doing fine. I'm enjoying the conversation both you gentlemen are having right now. I want to know, in terms with the Smithsonian affiliate that you have, what type of exhibitions can we expect the Dusable Museum to bring?
The question is, what type of exhibits will we see coming in from the Smithsonian? At this point, we have not scheduled Smithsonian events here, but there's surely planned for the future. Am I right?
Oh, certainly. I mean, I think we can talk about, generally speaking, exhibitions of a different scale and size than perhaps we've done before, of a certain depth that we've done before, and that are yet and still informed by the Chicago experience. I mean, the idea isn't to make it the repository of the traveling roadshow exhibit, where it comes from Washington and we exhibit it. We can do that, but we can also make it do what we make it do, essentially, which is we can create programming around it, an educational program around it that tells a unique story, so that even if you saw that exhibit in Washington or someplace else, how we cut it, how we do it, it's going to be a little different.
We have, as I was talking about John Tweedle, both of us being interested in photography, we have an extensive collection of his photographs, and we're going to try to figure out a way to exhibit those. Probably not this year, but maybe next year. Did you know John?
No, I did not. But, he belongs to a great family. New York and Harlem gets a lot of attention and well-deserved for its photographic legacy, a legacy of black photographers. But Chicago is right there with it. And to be able to show those things and exhibit those things is just what we want to do.
Yes. We have been talking about our collection. We've been talking an awful lot about our collection here. We're inviting everyone to come and take advantage of that. Take a very close look at what we're doing, and I hope that you will come see us very shortly. Erica is back. Thank you, Erica, for pushing the button.
Yes, not a problem.
No, it wasn't.
I just try to help out when I can.
You've been sitting over there all the time, Erica?
Yes, I have.
Did you enjoy our conversation?
So absolutely amazing.
And tell me why you have come back.
I have come back to give a close and thank everyone for tuning in and joining us. Thank the good people at KNTV. Also, our amazing staff at the Dusable Museum. Thank you all so much for this amazing opportunity. I was so inspired listening to you two gentlemen talk. Just all the great things that are coming, the great things that are in progress right now. It's amazing, don't you think?
I think so. I want to thank Lee for coming out on fairly
Most
short
definitely.
notice.
Thank you so much, Mr.
This
Bey.
evening, and I appreciate you being here to lead me through this process. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
very, very much. So again, all of you out there that tuned in for this installment of Mondays at the Do, thank you so much again, and we hope we see you again next week at Mondays at the Do.